welcome to my very first episode. You're watching Refiloe.Life and I'm Refiloe Mbaganyane. I'm really excited to start this journey with you, and I hope you'll be staying with us as I uncover and speak to amazing South Africans who add to the vibrancy and the texture of our experiences as young people in this amazing country and on this continent. With me today is Kaya Hlanga. We're talking literature and books, something very, very close to my heart. And I think most importantly, what makes literature and books something that's vital to who I am and perhaps to who you are is the multiplicity of voices, what it adds to how we think, how we live our lives, and how we begin to unpack our story and tell our story as young South Africans. Kaya, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for thinking to invite me.
Well, okay, I didn't just think to invite you, it just makes sense, okay? You're quite a vibrant person. You are an author, of course. You are a senior communications manager at a multinational, and you've been in advertising and won many awards in that field as well. And you're quite prolific on social media. We know this, right? We know
Yes,
this.
yes.
Kaya, what I want to find out from you, here you are, you've written a book, 2 books actually, and this is your second book. It's called To Quote Myself, and it's a memoir. Why in the world, at your young age, would you write a memoir?
That is a very, very good question, because when my publisher actually asked me to write the book, it took them a year and a half to convince me to write it. Because,
Oh, really?
Yes, because I said I'm too, like, I haven't done anything of significance. You know, I haven't changed the world. You know, because you always feel that that's who should be writing a memoir, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like Mandela, that makes sense that he'd
Yeah.
write one. Winston Churchill, that makes sense, but then me, like, what have I done? So what they actually said to me was, that is precisely the reason I need to write one, because of a story that is a lot of other young people can relate to, but the stories have just never been told.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's probably the reason. Something that's relatable, whereas you know, it's quite difficult to relate to what Mandela did. It's just so grand, and
It seems like an ideal that you literally cannot live up to.
Absolutely.
Right? Something that happens once a century, and then that's it.
yeah.
Kaya, I want to talk about that relatability of your story. I think what often tends to happen when I read South African stories or maybe African stories is that, yes, we're telling our stories, but there tends to be a sort of self-reflexive exercise where you talk about, for instance, you use a lot of colloquialisms in writing your book, and you can feel the rhythm and the cadence of this Xhosa coming through, even though it's written in English, right? Or you'll refer to or auntie, and you don't translate that, meaning multiple aunties or older black women. You literally write as you speak as a South African. So what I wanted to find out from you is, who were you writing for? Because I feel that often as black writers, we will write our stories, yet translate for this unseen white or international audience, not taking our voices as the norm.
You know, I love that question, because I always find that I hate the idea of having maybe a style of writing or like a conscious style. We're very deliberate about it. For me, I see writing as expression and communication, and I want to be able to express myself in a way that as many people as possible can understand and relate to what I'm saying, as opposed to showing off how well I can write and how many big words I know. Because I see that a lot, and it's like, okay, great, like, but just give me the message.
And can I relate?
Can I relate?
Understand?
Can I understand? And for me, and that is the key factor. That is the most important thing when it comes to writing. And I think that one of the guys that I loved reading is Ernest Hemingway.
Yes.
And Hemingway was very simple, and was actually quite criticized, I think, a lot in his time for writing so simply. And I think, but that's what you need to do. You've got to write simply. And I'm not writing for other writers. I'm writing for people who are going to pick up the book and read.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot to be said for speaking plainly, but getting your message across.
Yes.
What I want to find out from you is, in writing To Quote Myself, there are a lot of themes that come through. The theme of family, of mentorship. Your grandfather's presence in your life is quite a huge influence. Your relationship with your mother as well. But then you do go on, you extend the idea of mentorship into your career. Why was it important for you to talk about all the people that have contributed to your career? And you name them quite extensively, in fact, from the various advertising agencies that you work at.
Well, I think it's quite important to acknowledge people who have actually helped you get to where you are. And that's why, for me, I always talk about the notion of the self-made man, that I
Yeah.
do not believe in it. It doesn't make any sense.
It's like Jeb Bush calling himself his own man
That's
when he's writing
impossible.
on the millions of
Yeah.
his father and his brother. Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
exactly. So it's impossible to be your own man. It's
Yeah.
impossible. There's so many people who help shape and mold you to become the person that you become.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you learn so much from them. And sometimes there are things that you don't want to pick up from them, but there
Yes.
are things that
Yeah.
are great. And for me, I think once you acknowledge that you did not make yourself, and other people helped you get to where you are, you are much more willing to help others as well, because we as I mean, especially as black people, we still have a long way to, and a
Yeah.
lot of other people to bring along. So when I acknowledge that, it's going to be a lot easier for you to help others.
One of my favorite actors, Kevin Spacey, spoke about sending the elevator back down when you make it to the top. And I want to know if writing this memoir was your own way of sending that elevator back down. Are you interested, or how important is it for you to have more black voices writing, and what purpose does that serve?
I think it's extremely important for black voices, because I think that they are completely underrepresented. And not only are we underrepresented, other people tell our stories, and they tell them in their own way, as opposed to how we know and identify all those stories. That, for me, is the key, because I don't want someone telling, because what will happen is that you'll have someone, a white person, and
Yeah.
they'll say, maybe you should have written the story this way. But they don't understand the context.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at at a little event with former President Thabo Mbeki,
Yes.
and he was talking about how Africans need to start telling their own stories, because we are also starting to see ourselves according to how others
Here we go.
view us,
Yeah.
which is not a good look.
It's not healthy.
It's not healthy at all, because if someone says that you're less than, then whenever you read anything, you start believing that maybe I'm not, because I'm black, it means that I can never achieve,
Yeah.
A, B, and C.
Yeah.
I remember, like, one of the things that actually that threw me. I was talking to a lady, I forget her name, but she wrote a book about Mandela's relationship with food.
Yes, I
And,
remember that cookbook. Yes.
I forgot her name is. And what she said was very fascinating to me, was that, do you know that there is not a single book out there that was written by a black person about Mandela?
That says so much.
Not a
And she's
single book.
absolutely right.
And
It's scary.
exactly. And so he was like, actually, black voices need to start talking about Mandela, because all we see him now, we see him through the eyes of white people,
Yeah.
and sometimes white foreigners,
Yeah.
but not black South Africans. We actually understand the cultural nuances and all sorts of things when it comes to him. So I that actually like hit me right in the gut, as you're saying. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that is so hectic.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's really, really scary. Kaya, there are a lot of people who think that being a published author it's a difficult task. It's probably impossible, especially for a young South African or black person. Was it that way for you? And obviously you were approached and they asked you to write this specific book. But what is the basis on which you were approached? And is it difficult to be published?
I think it's very difficult to be published, and what happened was that obviously the publishers saw that there is a following that I have, and there is people do know that I do write,
Yes.
and because they know that I do write and they enjoy some of the things that I write, or whether they hate them or whether they like them, they still read them.
They know they're there.
So they know they're there, and so they kind of did approach me and ask me, whereas most people have lots of stories to tell, but are unable to find a publisher who is willing to produce the stories. People don't buy South African fiction, and I think for me there are probably two factors to that, and one of them is the fact that maybe people who write the books of fiction don't write books of fiction that are relatable.
Yes.
And secondly, people who do write fiction, who think that they deserve to be published, are writing not in a voice that can be relatable. So
Ah.
they feel that the story is great, and maybe the story isn't great. But maybe it's not even that. Maybe
Yeah.
not that the story is not great. It's just that, because for example, I don't think my story is particularly great, but I think because it's relatable
Yeah.
and easy to read,
Yeah.
and many other South Africans can see themselves in it, or can see people they know in the story, it's probably why it's done better than I expected.
I think it's a fantastic book. I think you've acquitted yourself very, very well. Don't sell yourself too short. Absolutely loved to quote myself. I really look forward to hearing more from you, reading more of your books, not just following you on social media. I think you're a fantastic voice on this South African landscape. Really appreciate your
No,
time.
thank you, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the show, and all the best for
Thank
the
you.
first season.
Thank you very much, Kai. I really appreciate you giving me your time. So we've just spoken to Kai Langa, the author of To Quote Myself. Please do me and yourself a huge, huge favor. We're embarking an amazing journey, and follow me on Refiloe.Life. You can subscribe to my channel. You can also check out my website, which is of course Refiloe.Life. In this journey, we will be speaking to amazing thought leaders, to vibrant South Africans such as Kaya Tlanga, and keep this top of mind when we're talking books, when we're talking literature. Black voices absolutely do matter. They're incredibly important, and that's exactly what we're going to give rise to here. Thank you.